toenails, vomiting, blah, blah, blah things.
Having to get your knees replaced.
Okay, that's not yet. Half marathon is just not painful, and marathon is.
Yeah.
We're doing the Shiner half, which is a lot of fun, because it's on the country roads around Shiner, and they limit the entrance to the population of the town, which is like 2,500, so it's not
Okay.
crazy. But you finish at the brewery, and you get free beer.
I did the ride to Shiner, and
Okay.
Austin, Houston, and San Antonio all leave at the same time.
Really?
Yeah.
Beating Shiner? That's great.
All right, City of Rollingwood Park Commission meeting agenda, Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order. I'm Chad Smith. We can go through and do a roll call.
Nicole Marisi.
Don Hudson.
Mary Elizabeth Kofer.
And we also have Melissa Morrow here. She's just stepped outside for just a moment. So, let me see. I don't need to. First up will be public comments. The public will be permitted to offer public comments via audio devices when logged into the meeting. If a member is having difficulties accessing the public meeting, then contact the city at diadair@rollingwoodtexas.gov. I guess I don't need to read that. Citizens wishing to address the Park Commission for items not on the agenda will be received at this time. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, Park Commission is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. I know we have one constituent who would like to make some public comments. Go ahead.
My name is Owen. I'm a junior here at Westlake High School and a Boy Scout with Troop 990 here in Westlake. And I have a project idea with some things I'm going to work on in Rollingwood, and I will get back to you guys with some details on it shortly. That's all I really have.
Is this for the Eagle Scouts project?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Do we have we prepared a whole kind of process for Eagle Scout projects about 1.5 years or 2 years ago. Do we still have that on file? It could help give you guidance unless you already have your.
That'd be great, yeah.
Do we still have that somewhere? I know that way back in the day that we had created something like this just to try to streamline the Eagle Scouts efforts, the commission's efforts.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Owen and
And
I met for
I don't
about
think
30
I've seen
minutes
it.
before this.
Is
and,
this the agenda item number 3?
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but we don't have enough details yet to take any possible action. So I was
That's
just
fine. That's
asked
fine. I
Owen
just didn't
to
wanna get
introduce
confused.
himself. Yeah.
So, who did that? Drew that up? Because we need to know that.
We
Nicole.
did this. I know that you were on the commission at that time. I don't believe Don or Melissa was. I don't believe
who
Chad
was
was
it?
at that time.
You know,
So
maybe
remember it.
it was Phil.
I know I was part of it because I actually went through the subcommittee process of like Eagle Scout
Oh,
guidance.
okay.
And at some point it was submitted to the city and we adopted that as far as giving guidelines to Eagle Scouts. This way
Right.
it really helped you all determine the course that would be appropriate, what we were asking, and then it just minimized the back and forth on it. But I could probably dig through my files if need be and see if I could repopulate that, or we could
Amazing, yeah.
probably get some type of a timeline from a previous agenda that had been already recorded.
That would be great.
Um,
That would save you a lot of time.
That'd be amazing.
That would be good. And also, we need to make sure that, I mean, I don't understand why this isn't, aren't all these things available for us anyway?
they should be archived somewhere. And again, I think just with transition of, commissions and roles and
Projects and so forth,
responsibilities.
yes.
And again, it was because I think it was when the Gaga pit was being constructed.
That makes
That's when
sense.
all of this started coming up of like, how can we make it easier for Eagle Scouts to come in and the commission to not have to reinvent the wheel and give you some guidance to be able to go from that. Let me see if I can do some sleuthing.
Several things here. What was your name again?
My name is Owen Manchin.
Can you say that again?
Sorry, Owen Manchin.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Do you have any general idea of what kind of thing you're looking at, or are you just real early in your
Hey
process?
guys, hold on just a second. We're not going to go back and forth with the public comments. We're going to go into our agenda items, and he's the first item on the agenda.
Perfect.
So let me go ahead and uh,
So
move
you'll pick
on
him
to
up in a
the,
minute.
yeah,
Okay.
move on to the consent agenda. Number 2 is discussion and possible action on the minutes from the April 3rd, 2023 Park Commission meeting. Does anybody have any problem with the minutes?
Very minor. The minutes talked about my proposal for a maintenance document, and the Park Commission was kind of lukewarm on doing that, and I think Nicole brought up that we had a similar document. But I talked to Izzy about that, and he said, we use what you made a little bit, and we're kind of good on what we're doing here, so I'm just going to let that coast.
Okay.
But it was a minor correction too.
Got it.
I met with Izzy, but we didn't try to go over and redo it because they know what they're doing for now.
So do you think the minutes need to be amended?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, well, I make a motion that we approve the April 3rd, 2023 minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, approved. Discussion and possible action regarding a potential Eagle Scout project in the park. Now, if you could hop up there on the microphone, we can ask you a few questions.
And also, what was your name again?
My name's Owen Mansion.
Make
Owen Mansion.
Mansion. Okay, great. And that was Troop 990?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any real general idea what you're thinking about?
Yeah, so it's just very briefly, it's just a bunch of small renovations or additions to the softball fields, 1 and 2, that will I think help the park out a little bit. Some of those including adding bleachers, building shady canopies over the bleachers for the games so that people have somewhere to sit that's in the shade, and just things like that.
Solving some drainage problems. Yeah, just general. He's going to use the form of the bleachers that are existing and the shade structures that are existing and try and mimic those as much as possible. But he's kind of in the infancy right now, and he's going to get back to us with a bunch of details.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Owen.
Awesome.
That's it.
I did just do a quick search through our archives and just kind of doing a 2-year, like 1999 or 2019 to 2021, and just searched Eagle Scout. I did find this was a draft. I don't know if this was final or not, but in our Park Commission meeting on October 6th of 2020, we did have an item here that was item number 6, discussion and possible action on an Eagle Scout volunteer project approval process. So I know that we have had some discussion back and forth. Again, I don't know if this was adopted as final. I'm just trying to give a timeline of guidance. Maybe we can research that to give you guidance of, you can choose a project for one of our pre-approved projects, or you can suggest a project yourself that's of interest. And then it gave you kind of steps to follow just to make your job a little easier and then our time a little bit more efficient.
If I can comment on that.
Yeah, please.
So you're probably working with Mr. Smith too to plan the project, and I just wanted to let you know that not only were my 2 boys Eagle Scouts, but I was on our Scout Council board for 10 years and a Scout leader, and I was
Awesome.
on the Eagle Scout Project Approval Committee and approved projects for years, and so I see a lot of it from the scouting perspective, but also I'm involved with the park. I'm on city council working with the park commission and on the park. So I can, if you'll work through Mr. Smith, I can help with that, because I know what an Eagle project's supposed to look like from the scout end, because we would, I know you have to go through the whole approval process there with your troop, and that can be tough too. So.
Awesome, Kevin. We'll take all the help we can get.
Yeah, if y'all want to ever just have a meeting, look at a project, just text me. And I'm
Okay.
anytime.
Okay, awesome. We'll get some more details, and then hopefully this will come up in a month or 2, and we'll have a more defined project to do. Next agenda item is number 4, update from Western Hills Little League and Western Hills Girls Softball. Steve, have you got anything? Thanks, Owen.
Not really. we're in registration phase. Season will probably start right after Labor Day with practices, games, third week of September.
Okay.
I'm assuming softball and Little League will kind of mimic up. And then the season usually ends like the weekend before that first weekend of Thanksgiving break. Now that Eanes has that whole week off, we don't mess with that weekend. So we're usually a week before that it'll end up. Fall evidently is a much slower time for softball and baseball. We don't get as many kids and/or teams, so they're really, at least from what I'm seeing, we're not going to have but 2, maybe 3 teams at most softball wise. And I think baseball is the same way. They just don't have a lot of teams because
Mm-hmm.
other sports pull them.
Yep. That's exactly right.
But any questions? I mean, we'll be working on the fields a little bit, you know, probably weeding and stuff like that here shortly, unfortunately in the heat, but got to get some of that taken care of in the dirt or whatever. But that's basically it. Yeah.
And we're about to apply a pre-emergent, or not a pre-emergent, but a fertilizer with weed control in it in our August application.
Okay.
We're doing, I think it's 5 applications of fertilizer a year, and we put pre-emergent in the spring. We put pre-emergent again in the fall for the winter weeds, but for there's existing chickweed, which is the worst one we got right now. It's that thick leaf, low, looks like a ground cover. And then we've got crabgrass and Dallas grass, but the chickweed is what we're kind of targeting in the next application. Is we'll be putting it down.
Okay.
So that'll-
Yeah, no, the weeds, the other ones are the ones, anything that's got some sort of sticker, you know, it's gonna,
The stickers.
the kids wear shoes most of the time, but there are times when we're taking them off to do certain things, and yeah, it
We're
does hurt.
targeting the grass first with the pre-emergent. They're hard to kill once they're up.
Yeah.
But the pre-emergent in the fall should prevent them from coming back in the spring. Should get better.
Well, we're about to touch on the rehab project of fields 3, 4, and 5, but I can tell you just from seeing the fields, the grass has already shown a ton of improvement. Just
It's been a tough year to improve grass.
right, yeah, 108 degrees every day. All right, thanks, Steve. Next agenda item is number 5, update on the rehabilitation project of fields 3, 4, and 5.
So we finished that project, and fortunately we were able to bring it in under budget and with all private contributions, which we've collected. And did you get that last check yesterday or today, Jim? Okay. You ought to get it today or tomorrow from one of the donors. Was in Europe all summer and just texted me this week. He sent his check in finally. I didn't want to bug him about it because I didn't know if he changed his mind. So, but he was in Poland apparently all summer. But anyway, it was a great project, and it was fun to have folks from the neighborhood who came out and volunteered to help lay the grass. We put down 40 yards of sandy loam fill. We put down 15 pallets of grass, which is pretty substantial. It's about 250 square feet per pallet. It was a $30,000 budget project. We did it for about $28,000, I think.
Nice.
We had some it's really when just 3, 4, and 5. We really did work on all the fields because we ended up running a gasoline powered plug extractor aerator on all the fields, and then we got 100 yards. 100 cubic yards, which is quite a bit. It's like 5 those big truckloads of composted mulch, and it's a top dressing material that the golf courses and ball fields use. They call it top dressing, and we put that on after the plug extraction to help fill those plugs with something that'll keep the soil moisture and permeability. And the biggest change we've made is just starting a fertilizer program, which we did not have, and a more regular watering program, which we did not have. One of the things that I've noticed is I was checking the sprinkler settings every week, and every week somebody's gone in and changed them and reprogrammed the sprinkler. So finally,
Who's doing that?
huh?
Who's doing that?
We have no idea. And so Johnny and Izzy and I, we talked about it and we put a lock on it, but Johnny and I were the only ones after that getting into it. Johnny in our maintenance department is a really smart guy, does a great job on sprinklers, and all the crew have been great. They've been really wonderful to work with. They were so helpful and taking on some of the extra effort when doing this field rehab project, jumped in and helped. Were always pleasant and capable and helpful, and just so that's been a real good part of it. The thing we've discovered though in the process is that our sprinkler system is got a lot of problems, and it has inadequate coverage. We ended up having to buy and install a temporary watering system, which we did, which is 4 programmable zones that Phil and I went to Home Depot and bought it, put it together and programmed it and have been running it. And that's why 3, 4, and 5 still look so good.
Yeah.
We've increased the amount of water we're putting on all the fields significantly. And we're putting out 300,000 gallons last month on the park, which is a pretty significant amount of water. I don't think we're going to need that much water in the future, but what we need is more consistent coverage. So I contacted Site 1, which is by John Deere Landscapes. It used to be Whittlesey, and they supply our fertilizer, and they supplied all our dirt for this project. And that's who Izzy and our maintenance crew uses to source sprinkler system parts, because they do basic repairs on our sprinkler system, which, you know, we identified a lot of those in the spring that needed to be done, leaks, unworking heads. We hadn't done a systematic review of the system. We did our best we could in the spring. We fixed what we could, and we got it running, but then we noticed, you know, that we don't have sufficient coverage, either because the heads aren't putting out enough water and throwing it far enough, they were spaced too far apart when they were installed, or we don't have enough heads in all the locations we need them. So what I did is I contacted Site 1 and asked them, who's the best guy? I told them what the problem we have is. I said, who's the best guy that buys parts from you that knows sprinkler systems and can evaluate our system and help us? And they recommended a guy who we met with this week with Izzy and Johnny in the maintenance department, and he's the guy that works for the city of Austin, who takes care of all of Zilker Park sprinkler systems.
Oh, wow.
And he's a really bright guy, and we asked him to give us a proposal. He charges $85 an hour. I said, give us a proposal for how many hours it'll take to go in, and first of all, we have no map of our system. Like, we can't, you know, we have 3 different meters on our system. They weren't being read until January. Now we're reading them, okay? But they don't totally make sense to me, because one of the meters shows that the lower park is using as much water as the upper park and the ball fields put together. And I don't think that's right. But we don't have a map of the system. So I can't show you a map that shows you where the line comes out of the meter to what valve boxes. We do have the valve boxes numbered where we can program them. We know what valve boxes run which zones, and so we've got them programmed properly. But as far as like where the main lines are and where they branch off and whether they're 1-inch lines or 3-inch lines, we have no idea. And
I mean, we're going to have to know that anyway if we go to trench or dig or do anything.
It's not a big deal to trench through a piece of PVC that's a 2-inch line and put it back together. You would, even if you knew where it was, you'd probably trench through it anyway, just because, you know, that's just how you trench. But the problem is, like, we don't know like how many gallons per minute each head is putting out, and we can't tell you whether like a particular run, like zone 8, can take another sprinkler, because we don't know if it's a 1-inch line that can flow, you know, whether it's flowing 20 gallons a minute or 40 gallons a minute, or whether it can add to it or not, or exactly what the problems are. And so we asked him to give us a proposal for a certain number of hours. I told him like something like not to exceed $5,000 to map the system, make notes for us, and make recommendations for what we need to do to fix it, and then to price out the recommendations so that, you know, and he said, well, do you want it to be perfect or pretty good or just like, you know, triage? We said, give us options, you know, give us a list of proposals of things that could make this system work better, and let us choose from it. We'll decide what to pick. So I haven't seen his proposal yet. We just met with him a few days ago. And I'm going to follow up with him, but Phil's working on it with me and the parks guys. And this actually came out of our maintenance department. They are the ones who requested that we do something, you know, because we're like, okay, what are we going to do with it? You know, how are we going to get this thing to water properly? And they're like, it needs a lot of effort. We don't have the time or the expertise to go in and study it and fix it. And so they said, if we could, I was like, you want some help? And they're like, yes, please. So that's why we started down this road. So we're waiting on that, and that's kind of the next step in the park rehab project. The other thing that came up, and we'll get to in a minute, is the other agenda item, which is as we did the work in the park on the grass and filling where all the dirt had washed out and stuff, we spent a lot of time out there at the park, you know, because I mean, I was going and moving water myself once or twice a day and checking on the program and make sure everything works and going by, you know, just different things just because we were doing it. And so that's when the gate project became kind of obvious to us as something that would be helpful, but we'll get into that when we get to that. Otherwise, you know, we're just continuing fertilizing. One of the problems I've seen on park rehab is we had a good fertilizer program with pre-emergence, but we weren't doing anything to address the existing weeds, and I was kind of hoping that Bermuda would just ultimately choke them out, but that chickweed is persistent. It's a nasty weed, and it's one that, you know, I think that is pretty easily brought under control with some, you know, it'll be an integrated granular product that's weed and feed, basically.
Okay.
So, anyway,
Well,
any questions or comments about any of that?
I just want to say thanks for all the attention you've put on the park and all the improvements that you've made. It's made a huge difference already, and all the time you've spent. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all supporting the effort and allowing me to help with it, because, you know, it's real rewarding to see the
Yeah,
grass,
sure. No, it
grass
is.
turning
It's
green.
definitely rewarding. And by way of segue, so that you don't have to go sit down, we'll move on to agenda item number 6.
I
Oh,
did,
yeah.
I wanted to make a quick,
Yeah.
I did want to thank you also. Definitely a labor of love. One of the things that I thought was so amazing was that you were able to keep that park area open and just really do the maintenance on the part that needed it. And so I really appreciate that they were able to show that they could do a project like that and still make it accessible to people. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action to install an additional gate for fields 3, 4, and 5. I think everybody's kind of seen the sketch of how that gate's going to work, and I'm all for it. So if you want to talk about it for a second, you can.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about it. When we were out there, one of the things we saw was the traffic is what created a lot of the damage to those fields through that gate. And it's both baseball and dog traffic because it's the main gate. So we thought about adding a second gate right in there to close one to sort of relieve it and push traffic and we could kind of go back and forth that way. But when we started trying to move a gate, we actually had a plan to propose to put a gate, you know, just another 100 feet further north to the right as you're going into the fields. But we realized that the gates are where they are because the baseballs. And we were standing there looking at where to put a gate. I thought, well, somebody's going to get hit by a baseball if we put a gate right here. So that was a little eye-opening. But then Izzy came to us and we were talking about it, and he suggested we put it behind the backstop because he says that corner back there is this kind of a dumb maintenance problem for them that they can never really take care of. And the other thing I noticed is as people come into the dog park with their dogs, all the dogs come and meet them at the gate, okay? And then I also noticed that the humans all stand around talking to each other at the gate. And so that's why that all got worn out. And really to maintain a surface and prevent erosion and blow out of dirt, really at the gate you need a little bit of decomposed granite. And so with a double gate, it's so much better with the dogs because your dog, you don't get mobbed when you're walking in it, but it moves all that dog traffic away from the baseball field, and you're not walking out across first baseline, you know, with everybody all the time. I think it's a much, much better system. And we asked RCDC to approve funding of this gate project, and yesterday they voted to approve funding it.
Oh, awesome.
So, you know, we're trying to not get into any of our city budget with any of this park issues because, you know, nobody wants to raise taxes. I don't. And I don't want, you know, and RCDC's got some money. So I've talked to RCDC about funding the gate project. They're going to do it. I've talked to them. I told them that the park commission, the city, the citizens are gonna want some other things done at the park that fall under capital improvements in the future, and that this was just the first request we're gonna make is this gate project, which they approved, and then they are trying to deal philosophically and internally with the idea of doing park improvements. Their statute, the statute that creates the Community Development Corporation, authorizes them to spend money on economic development for business corridor, but
Mhm.
also, which there's some stuff they're doing, but there's not a lot we can do down there because it's such a small commercial area, and you know, you don't want to just throw money at stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing the statute allows them to do is to make capital expenditures in the park. They're sitting on about $400,000 to $500,000 cash right now, and they bring in pretty substantial money, which I think is about $200,000 a year. And then they give some of it to the city for overhead and such, so they may net 150 or something, but they have a lot of money coming in and building up, and there's a lot of projects that I think we could do in the future with that money, and I'm trying to get that sort of consensus built amongst all the different players and constituents and, you know, groups, and so, anyway.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the further color on the double gate, because I was curious why the rationale for that, but that makes all the sense in the world. If you get mobbed by dogs right as you're coming through there, and everybody loiters right there, and that area just gets worn out.
And since it's hard to water and mow, it's a great place to put a little decomposed granite so that, you know.
Oh yeah, no, it makes sense. Okay. Well, does anybody have any discussion on the gate that they want to go to, or?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, cool. Well, I make a motion that we approve the new gate as designed.
I'll second it.
Okay. Take it to a vote. Everyone for it, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It's approved.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you all. Appreciate
You
your
bet.
support of the project.
All right. If nobody else has anything to discuss, I say we adjourn.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Love it. Way to go.
All right.
Well done.
That's a record.
So efficient.
32 minutes.
32 minutes.